Susan was the kind of woman people noticed without trying. She didn't have to shout or fight for attention. Her confidence did it for her. In the small city of Greenford, where everyone knew everyone's business, Susan carried herself like a person with secrets and power. She worked at a popular fashion store downtown and had built a reputation for always getting what she wanted: discounts, favors, friendships, and even apologies from people who weren't wrong. Her laughter was loud, her perfumes expensive, her nails always perfect, and her words sharp enough to cut. She made friends easily, but most of those friendships came with invisible strings attached. Susan didn't like being outshined, and she didn't like being corrected. She loved being admired, and when admiration wasn't available, she preferred fear. That was how she treated Maya: quiet, hard-working, and too kind for her own good. Maya had joined the store 3 months after Susan, and within weeks, customers loved her. She spoke softly, helped people patiently, and never made anyone feel rushed. Her smile was simple, but it felt real, and people were drawn to it. Susan watched it all with a fake grin that hid annoyance. When customers asked for Maya by name, Susan's stomach tightened. When the manager praised Maya's effort, Susan nodded like she agreed, while her mind searched for ways to pull her down. "She's acting innocent," Susan would tell herself. "People like her because they don't know her." But deep inside, Susan knew the truth. Maya was simply good, and Susan couldn't stand it. Susan didn't attack Maya openly. That wasn't her style. She preferred slow poison, the type that looked like sweetness. She started by acting friendly, offering Maya rides, buying her lunch, complimenting her outfits. "You're too humble, Maya," she'd say with a bright smile. "You don't know how beautiful you are." Maya, who didn't expect jealousy from anyone, accepted the friendship with gratitude. She had grown up believing people were mostly good if you treated them well, so she trusted Susan, even when Susan started asking questions that felt a bit too personal. "Where do you live? Are you dating anyone? How much do you earn? Are you saving money?" Maya would answer innocently, not realizing she was handing Susan tools. Soon, Susan began planting small lies in places that mattered. She would tell a coworker, "Maya said she thinks the manager is unfair," even though Maya never said that. She would casually mention to another staff member, "Maya asked me how to get customers to tip her extra," painting Maya as greedy. Susan's tone always sounded innocent, like she was just repeating something harmless. And because Susan was popular, always laughing, always confident, people believed her without checking. Slowly, Maya noticed people were becoming colder. Conversations stopped when she walked in. Some coworkers started making little jokes that felt pointed. Maya would go home confused and replay everything she'd said, wondering what mistakes she made. Susan would watch it all like a person watching a movie she directed, satisfied that her plan was working. One afternoon, the store manager called a staff meeting. Everyone stood near the counter while customers browsed quietly. The manager cleared her throat and smiled. "We've decided to introduce a new position," she said. "Assistant supervisor, someone who helps organize shifts, handle customer issues, and support the team." Susan's eyes brightened immediately. She straightened her posture like someone already wearing the title. Maya stood quietly beside her, not thinking much of it. Susan had been in the store longer, more confident, and always seemed close to management. It felt obvious who would get it. But when the manager continued speaking, Susan's smile slowly stiffened. "After reviewing performance and customer feedback," the manager said, "we've chosen Maya." For a second, the room went silent. Maya's eyes widened in shock. She looked around as if someone was playing a prank. Then she whispered, "Me?" The manager nodded warmly and praised Maya's patience, professionalism, and consistency. Coworkers clapped, some honestly, some forced. Susan clapped too, but her hands felt heavy, like they belonged to someone else. Inside her chest, something hot and bitter rose like smoke. She forced a laugh and hugged Maya in front of everyone. "I'm so happy for you," she said loudly. "You deserve it." But as she hugged Maya, her nails pressed into her back slightly, just enough to release her anger without anyone noticing. That night, Susan didn't sleep. She lay in bed staring at the ceiling, repeating one sentence in her mind like an insult. Maya won. Susan told herself she was only taking back what belonged to her. In her mind, Maya didn't earn the promotion. Maya stole it with her fake kindness. She convinced herself that the world was unfair, that hard workers were overlooked while soft people climbed by pretending to be saints. She walked into work the next day with a calm face and a storm inside. She greeted Maya with extra sweetness, offering advice, pretending to support her new role. "Let me show you how things really work here," Susan said, smiling like an older sister. Maya, grateful and still adjusting to the responsibility, accepted Susan's help without suspicion. And Susan began learning every detail of Maya's new duties, how the schedules were made, how complaints were recorded, how shift swaps were approved. Then Susan began creating problems that would point back to Maya. She would switch shift papers when no one was looking, so two workers would show up for the same time while another shift went uncovered. When the manager asked what happened, Susan would sigh and say, "Maya has been under pressure. Maybe she's overwhelmed." She would also accidentally give the customers the wrong information, then quickly step aside and let Maya handle the anger. "You're the supervisor now," Susan would say softly, as if encouraging her. Maya started coming home exhausted, her mind full of numbers, names, and complaints. She cried sometimes in the shower so no one would hear, and Susan watched her struggle with a satisfied silence, believing she was slowly winning again. Weeks passed, and Maya's confidence began to crack. She still tried her best, but mistakes followed her like a shadow. People who once admired her started whispering, "Maybe she's not ready," and Susan made sure those whispers grew louder. One day, Susan created her biggest move yet. The store had received expensive new stock, designer bags and shoes meant for a weekend sale. The manager warned everyone to be careful because the company would audit inventory. That same afternoon, Susan waited until the storeroom was quiet, then removed 2 bags and hid them inside a large trash bag behind cleaning supplies. Later, she walked out looking slightly worried and went straight to the manager. "I don't want to accuse anyone," she said carefully, "but I noticed Maya was alone in the stockroom for a while, and now 2 bags are missing." The manager's face changed immediately. The company audit was serious, and missing items could cost jobs. She called Maya into the office and asked her questions that felt like knives. Maya's eyes widened in disbelief. She said, "I didn't take anything," she said, her voice shaking. "Why would I do that?" But Susan's lie had already planted doubt. The manager checked camera angles, but the stockroom had blind spots. Coworkers, already influenced by Susan's earlier whispers, started avoiding Maya as if she carried trouble. Maya begged for a fair investigation, but in Greenford, rumors moved faster than truth. By the end of the week, Maya was suspended while the store reviewed the situation. Susan walked around with a quiet satisfaction that tasted like victory. In her mind, she had corrected the world. She had taken her place back. The moment Maya stopped coming to work, Susan's mood improved like a person who had removed a stone from her shoe. She laughed louder, joked more, and even started bringing coffee for coworkers again, acting like the store was finally peaceful. When the manager announced that Maya's position would be temporarily handled by Susan, Susan pretended to be humble. "I'll do my best," she said, lowering her eyes politely. But inside, she was celebrating like someone who had won a war. She told herself she was stronger, smarter, and more deserving than Maya ever was. She even started buying more expensive things, new clothes, shoes, jewelry, because to Susan, looking successful was the same as being successful. She posted photos online with captions that sounded motivational but felt like bragging. "Hard work always wins," she wrote, smiling into the camera. But victory has a strange way of making people careless. Susan became too confident. She started taking longer breaks, leaving early, and treating coworkers like she was already the manager. She also began dipping into small, dishonest acts, the way a person who has crossed one line stops respecting the next. She would take small cash tips and keep them quietly. She would mark damaged goods as returned and take them home. She would manipulate the schedule to favor herself and punish people who didn't flatter her. She thought she was untouchable. After all, she had brought Maya down and nothing happened. In Susan's mind, life had confirmed the truth she always believed. The bold ones win, and the soft ones lose. One rainy evening, Susan was closing the store when a woman walked in quietly. She was dressed simply, with an umbrella in one hand and a calm confidence in her eyes. Susan, already tired and irritated, forced a customer service smile. "We're almost closing," she said. The woman nodded politely and looked around the store as if she already knew the place. Then she stepped closer and asked softly, "Are you Susan?" Susan blinked, surprised. "Yes," she answered slowly. "Who are you?" The woman's expression remained calm. "My name is Mrs. Harris," she said. "I work with the company's internal audit and investigation unit. We're doing routine checks in several branches." Susan's heart skipped once, but she quickly smiled. "Oh, welcome," she said, pretending nothing was wrong. "How can I help you?" Mrs. Harris didn't smile back. She asked Susan to bring inventory records, return logs, and shift schedules for the past 2 months. Susan's hands began to sweat as she pulled files out, trying to stay calm. She reminded herself that she had covered her tracks, but Mrs. Harris had the kind of patience that made lies feel small. She asked questions slowly, then requested to review security footage, not only from the stockroom, but also from the hallway camera that showed who entered and exited the storage area. Susan's throat tightened. She had forgotten about that hallway camera. It didn't show inside the stockroom, but it showed movement. And movement, when studied carefully, can speak louder than confession. Susan watched Mrs. Harris take notes quietly, and for the first time in a long time, Susan felt something she wasn't used to feeling: fear without control. The audit didn't end that day. It continued quietly over the next week. Mrs. Harris spoke to staff members privately. She reviewed records, compared handwriting, tracked timestamps, and asked for store key logs. Susan tried to act normal, but her nerves betrayed her. She snapped at coworkers for small things. She forgot simple tasks. She checked her phone too often, hoping for distraction. At night, she couldn't sleep. Her mind replayed every step of her plan like a movie that suddenly felt dangerous. She started to wonder if Maya had spoken to someone, if Maya had reported her suspicions. Susan tried to reassure herself that Maya was too kind, too quiet, too broken to fight back. But Susan didn't understand something important. Kindness doesn't always mean weakness. Sometimes kindness simply means a person doesn't fight until it's necessary. One morning, Susan walked into the store and saw the manager standing near the office door with Mrs. Harris. Both women looked serious. "Susan," her voice tight, "please come into the office." Susan's legs felt heavy as she walked. Inside, Mrs. Harris placed a file on the table and turned it slowly toward Susan. "We reviewed the hallway footage," she said. "On the day those bags went missing, you entered the stockroom twice within a short period. Maya entered once. You were the last person seen leaving before the bags were reported missing." Susan opened her mouth, but no sound came out. Mrs. Harris continued, calm and firm. "We also matched handwriting on altered shift notes, and we found irregular patterns in return logs that began when you started helping Maya." Susan's head spun. She wanted to deny it, but the room felt like it was shrinking. Her lies were no longer floating as rumors. They were now hard evidence stacked neatly on a table. Susan tried to talk her way out, like she always did. She cried suddenly, switching from confidence to vulnerability. "I've been under pressure," she said, wiping her eyes. "I didn't mean to. Things just happened." She even tried to shift blame. "Other people do worse," she whispered. But Mrs. Harris didn't move. The manager looked at Susan with disappointment that felt heavier than anger. "So you framed Maya," she said quietly, her voice breaking. Susan shook her head, but her denial sounded weak even to herself. The manager stood up and pushed a termination letter toward her. "You're dismissed," she said, "and the company will decide if further action is needed." Susan stared at the paper as if it was written in a foreign language. Fired? Her? Susan, who always won? Susan, who always had the upper hand? It didn't make sense in her mind. Her chest tightened, and she suddenly felt like she couldn't breathe properly. When Susan walked out of the store that day, the rain outside felt colder than before. She held her bag tight and avoided looking at anyone. Some coworkers watched silently, some whispered, some looked away. Susan's phone started buzzing with messages from friends who had heard the news, but the messages weren't supportive. They were curious. They wanted details. They wanted gossip. Susan suddenly realized the same people she used for admiration would now use her for entertainment. She went home and locked her door, sinking onto her couch like a person who had lost all strength. Her mirror reflected a woman still dressed beautifully, but the beauty felt empty now. The confidence she wore like perfume had evaporated. Susan thought she won, but life had just shown her the truth. Winning through cruelty always comes with a bill, and the bill always arrives when you least expect it. Days later, Maya returned to the store, not to work, but to collect her final documents and an apology letter from the manager. The company cleared her name completely and offered her a position at another branch with better pay. Maya accepted quietly. She didn't gloat. She didn't insult Susan. She simply carried herself with the calm of someone who had survived something painful and come out stronger. When Maya walked out, she felt sadness, not because Susan hurt her, but because she realized how dangerous jealousy could be. Maya had lost sleep, confidence, and peace, but she gained something priceless: wisdom. She learned that not everyone who smiles at you means well, and not everyone who calls you friend is safe. She promised herself to protect her peace better, to be kind but not blind, and to never let someone else's jealousy define her worth. Susan, on the other hand, sat in her small apartment with curtains drawn, avoiding the world that once applauded her. She applied for other jobs, but word traveled fast in Greenford. Interviews ended politely but coldly. Friends stopped calling. The attention she loved turned into shame that followed her like a shadow. One evening, Susan opened her phone and saw Maya's post online. Nothing disrespectful, nothing dramatic, just a simple message: "God restores what was stolen. Keep your heart clean." Susan stared at it for a long time, her throat tight. In that moment, she finally understood the bitter lesson life had been trying to teach her. The real win is not pulling someone down. It's building yourself without destroying others. Susan thought she won because she pushed Maya out, but life taught her a painful truth. When you hurt someone to rise, you don't rise. You only climb temporarily until the ground beneath you collapses. And when it collapses, it doesn't just break your plans, it breaks your pride.